How many people do you know who struggle with their health? Chances are, whether they show it or not, most of the people in your life do. And chances are, you're one of them. Whether you're dealing with anxiety, depression, endometriosis, acne, eczema, autoimmune, thyroid, Lyme, brain fog, fatigue, or any other symptom or condition, you're far from alone. Living with symptoms has become the new normal. So no more guessing games. It's time to get answers. Welcome to the Medical Medium Podcast. I'm Anthony William.
We're talking about birds. Birds falling from the sky because of chemtrails and geoengineering trails. And we're not just talking about a few birds. We're talking about millions of birds, hundreds of millions over the course of the last 50, 60, 70 years. Especially now. There's more chemtrail planes and geoengineering planes in the sky than ever before in history. And they're spewing out and dropping out and injecting so many chemicals and toxic waste into the atmosphere, into our skies, that birds are losing ground. It's truly a war on our birds. And maybe you're somebody that has seen this or witnessed this. Maybe you're somebody somewhere on this planet that walked down a street or a trail in the woods and saw hundreds of birds laying around or flopping around as they were dying. This has been seen by many people around the world. We're covering how it all happens, how it all goes down, how the chemtrails and the geoengineering trails are destructive on our birds. Get ready for this one, fasten your seatbelt, strap yourself in, because this episode is not for the faint-hearted. We're taking another plane flight. Chemtrails are the #1 bird killer, long term. Now, of course, a contender is the bird flu, and that is killing a lot of birds right now. But over the last 50, 60 years, chemtrails have taken the cake when it comes down to killing birds. Chemtrails have taken out entire large flocks during migration, where thousands upon thousands of birds just hit the ground, flop around and die. People have seen this before. They've watched it. Now keep in mind, there's a lot of land. There is a lot of land people do not see or walk on. There are a lot of woods, forests, mountains, hills, valleys that people are not allowed on. Government land, classified land, land for testing, land for mining, or just endless swaths of land, vast amount of acres that nobody has access to, and even private land nobody has access to. But the birds do. They have access to this land. And the majority of the birds fly and die over this land, die from chemtrails, and land on the land dead or dying. And no one sees it. Millions and millions of birds over the years have fallen into these federal lands, into these private lands, into these forests, these hills, these valleys, on these mountains. And the death is not seen. These birds are not seen. The majority of them die this way in these places because there's that much land out there. There's that many acres out there that are not being used. And when birds die in the streets by the thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands, and they die in a town or a city on a city highway, it's a shock, and people have seen it. They have. They videotaped it. It's out there. People have seen it throughout the decades and talked about it too. And it's a shocker. Birds falling out of the sky. But an hour later, it's just a bunch of dead birds. People drive over them. Vultures go and pick their bones. Maggots take over and they just disappear. No one's saying, hey, everything should stop right now. Let's examine this. Let's tape this area off. Let's call the authorities. Let's look at these birds. Let's do autopsies on these birds. Let's see what chemicals are in them. Let's see what's wrong. How did they die? What happened? Was it something in the sky? Did they get affected by something? Did something hurt them? What caused this? And right now, today, there's only two things that knock flocks of birds out of the sky. It's the bird flu, which is happening right now out there. The bird flu is rampant, and flocks of birds are falling from the sky because they're infected by the bird flu. And chemtrails, geoengineering trails, both of them. That's the other thing that kills thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of birds. But here's the thing. The bird flu is recent and just starting to take out birds. And that may grow worse over time, but right now, chemtrails and geoengineering trails dominate in bird killing. And the blood is on the hands of the chemtrail programs, the hierarchy, the elite that's secretly behind the chemtrails and geoengineering trails. The blood is on their hands, on their souls. And maybe some people don't really care about birds or think birds are important. But they really are, and for too many reasons to count. And this crime needs to be talked about, and it needs to be seen. So how have millions of birds died from chemtrails and geoengineering trails? To begin with, we need to talk about how high birds fly, the altitude that migration occurs, the altitude that birds fly at. When birds travel, they travel at a height anywhere between 300 and 1,000 feet, depending on the species, because many birds fly even higher than that. There are many factors that determine this. Weather is one of the big ones. During migration, storms can force birds to fly much higher. And if a weather front is pushing low pressure, it forces the birds to fly higher. If a weather front is pushing high pressure, forces the birds to fly a little lower. So why does any of this even matter? It matters because we're talking about how the chemtrails kill the birds and how the geoengineering trails kill the birds. Now remember, in the previous episodes, I talked about how commercial airliners fly at an altitude around 30,000 feet, and chemtrail planes fly around 20,000 feet, 15,000 feet, and even 10,000 feet. And many chemtrail planes and geoengineering planes fly at 3,000 feet. Yes, 3,000 feet. Now, how is it that chemtrail planes are flying this low, 3,000 feet? They do this in mountainous regions. Now, if a chemtrail plane or geoengineering plane starts heading to a mountainous region, and that chemtrail plane is flying at 10,000 feet, and the small mountains ahead are anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 feet above sea level, the chemtrail plane doesn't raise altitude, doesn't ascend or climb higher, stays at that altitude of 10,000 feet, and then closes in on the small mountain range, which is 3,000 to 4,000 feet above sea level. So now that chemtrail plane is really 6,000 feet above sea level, 6,000 feet, the altitude. Now this is important because a flock of birds migrating could be flying at an altitude from 2,000 to 5,000 feet above the mountainous range, leaving only a short distance of 1,000 to 2,000 feet from the chemtrail plane, from the actual chemtrail being released out of the chemtrail plane. So what's the chances of this happening? The chances are great because it happens all the time. People see birds at the park or they see birds in their backyard, but the majority of the birds are migrating and passing over mountainous regions. And the distance between that chemtrail, between that geoengineering trail, is close, very close to the birds. Now, for example, ducks can fly and migrate up to 10,000 feet. And regardless of mountainous regions, and we're just talking about land close to sea level, ducks flying at 10,000 feet will match a chemtrail plane flying at 10,000 feet. So simplifying it a little bit, birds fly high, chemtrail planes fly low, birds get caught into the chemtrails themselves and get snuffed out and then die. And we're not just talking about a few birds. We're talking about thousands of birds, tens of thousands in just a flock, migrating. We're talking about a massive amount of birds dying close to death almost at exactly the same time. And keep in mind, every batch lot in the plane Every group of chemicals that they have that they're dumping, whether it's geoengineering planes or a chemtrail plane, can be different at any given time. So some concoctions could be instantly deadly, while some are intoxicating and dangerous enough to weaken the birds, causing their flight pattern to be disturbed, causing them to weaken and have to drop out of the sky, causing them to have to land early for the day, which could ruin everything for them on the day after, depending about the weather, disturbing the process of nature, destroying the very birds we love. So how do 10,000 birds die at a clip? How does it really happen? To begin with, as the chemtrails are released into the sky, or geoengineering trails are being released in the sky, as the deadly metals and deadly chemicals are being pumped out of tanks that sit inside of the jet planes, they begin to enter the airspace, creating a trail. And that trail begins at around 100 feet wide. And as the plane keeps on flying, that trail becomes not just a mile long, but it can go about 20 miles long. Now, some chemtrails can go 10 miles long, some 20, and some even 50 miles long, depending on the speed of the plane. Now, as the chemtrail or geoengineering trail sits in the sky, it starts to drop slowly. But not just drop slowly, it starts to spread out. It starts to expand. Now, exhaust fumes aren't chemtrails. So when an engine is burning fuel, and that fuel is turning into exhaust fumes, that is not a chemtrail. Now, a lot of people that believe in chemtrails and talk about chemtrails out there believe it's chemicals in the fuel tank. So it's chemicals in the fuel itself, and it's what the planes are actually burning. And the trail is that trail coming from the engines. But that's not true. That's not how it works. You can't put all of those toxic chemicals in fuel and expect a plane to fly. It's not going to happen. And with geoengineering, you can't put weather modification chemicals like barium, like metals and solvents inside a fuel tank and expect that to be released and alter the weather. That's not going to happen either. All of these chemicals and metals and pollutants and toxins are released from tanks that are inside the planes. The planes are hollowed out. The tanks are installed. All the chemicals are filled into those tanks. And then the pilot clicks a switch. And then the contents of those tanks are released out of the side of the jet. Now, normally, the injection valves and injectors, these little pipes where the contents are released, squirt out into the air, are located near the engines. They locate these near the engines on purpose for a reason, so that if someone sees this with a telescope or binoculars, or they happen to be living in an area where they see it in a better way, clear, like on a perfectly clear day, or if one of the chemtrail planes is flying lower than normal and someone happens to see that the contents are being released nowhere near the engines, and then it gets suspicious, where it looks like the trails are being injected out of little pipes at different areas of the plane. Now, the chemtrail programs and the geoengineering programs and the hierarchy behind it all do not want people to see that. So the pipes, the injectors, the injector valves are actually positioned near the engines now. Now, in the old days, it wasn't like that. Nowadays, because of the amount of people having the technology to really hone in on these planes, they have to do it differently. Back in the 1990s and the early 2000s, you can clearly see the injector sites on the planes. They were different. They weren't in the position of the engines. They were away from the engines, and it was more than obvious that it was actually being done. Now, even now in 2025, not every plane is set up like that. They are away from the engines. Many of them you can tell, and you can see that. But a lot more planes, the injector pipes are stationed near the engines now. So they're upgrading. They're changing it up. So it looks like a contrail instead of a chemtrail. So as these chemtrails and geoengineering trails leave the plane, they're not leaving as exhaust. The reason why I'm talking about this is because when exhaust fumes enter the air and they leave the jet engine or even the car engine or truck engine or bus engine, oxygen from the air will interdisperse between it after it's been released. Oxygen will enter it and help it disperse so that when you're walking across a street and a car just went by and you're smelling exhaust fumes, there's still oxygen there with it. You're still breathing in both. There's still a mix of air, oxygen, with those fumes, with that smog, because you're 20 feet away, 30 feet away, 10 feet away, or much more. The air you're breathing has a mix in it. It has a mix of the exhaust fumes that came out of the pipe and a mix of the air that's surrounding it. So you're getting oxygen at the same time you're smelling the exhaust fumes. Now, the jet engines do the same thing. They're releasing exhaust. Fuel is burning up there. And when the planes are on the runway and the guys that work on the tarmac directing those planes, they breathe in the exhaust fumes from the jet engines, but they're also breathing in oxygen from the air that's surrounding them as well, that's mixing in with the fumes from the jet engines. They're breathing in some oxygen, staying alive, while walking around the tarmac, walking on the runway, and walking around the jet engines. So why are we talking about this, and why does any of this matter? Because when 10,000 to 20,000 or 50,000 birds die in a clip, there's a reason for it. And the reason isn't exhaust fumes coming out of a jet plane in the sky. 50,000 birds migrating, flying, don't die from breathing in some exhaust fumes mixed with air, mixed with oxygen in the sky. They don't breathe in exhaust fumes from a jet engine and all fall to the ground and die. It doesn't work like that. Something else is killing them. And as the planes are flying and the fuel is burning and the exhaust is venting, that exhaust interdisperses with the air. And there's oxygen in that air, and oxygen stays in that air. And yes, that exhaust fume is toxic. And yes, if you were too close to the engine, it would not be good. But birds are not dying because of it. Now, when it comes down to a chemtrail being released, something different happens. The contents in a chemtrail are so toxic that when they're released, oxygen cannot sustain itself within it. And there's a reason for that. Because the contents in that chemtrail eat up oxygen. They destroy it. This means that when air intermixes with the chemtrail, it's different than air intermixing with exhaust. The free radicals are so deadly in a chemtrail that it destroys oxygen instantly, providing no hope at all for a flock of birds to survive when entering a chemtrail, or when a chemtrail is descending upon a flock of birds that are migrating. So when a chemtrail is 50 feet wide, 100 feet wide, and then expands more and more and becomes 500 feet wide and becomes 1,000 feet wide and then becomes 2,000 feet wide and eventually becoming more than 5,000 feet wide, there's nowhere to go, nowhere to breathe. Birds can't survive in that. They can't sustain themselves in that. Now, if birds are far enough underneath a chemtrail, it's safer, it's different. They can survive their flight pattern, eventually going in a different direction of that chemtrail. It's all about Russian roulette. It's all about hit or miss. It's all about being in the right place at the right time, wrong place at the wrong time for birds. Because deadly free radicals use up oxygen. They destroy and eat up oxygen. So oxygen cannot exist within it. It cannot interdisperse or mix in on any level. It gets used up, burned out immediately. What this means for birds at the wrong time, wrong place is immediate death. Now that's why millions of birds have been falling out of the sky for years. That's why 10,000 at a time, 20,000 as a clip, land on roads and villages, or forests where no one ever sees it or sees them. Now, the lung of a bird is able to take in air at a speed and velocity that the bird flies, and the lung of a bird takes approximately 1 breath per flap when flying at an elevated altitude. Now, the lung of a bird is able to process oxygen differently than humans, because when migrating, a bird flies high, where there's less oxygen, where the air is thinner. Now, even though birds are designed for this, it's still a struggle. It's still difficult. It's difficult for them to get oxygen when flying that high. But it's the only way to keep up with migration, to make the distance for survival. Now, there's a rule of thumb for birds. Fly or die. Fly or starve, because food runs out. Not all birds, but most birds have to fly away to another area to collect food. Which brings us to the reality, the grim reality, that over time, it's all the birds that migrate, that fly in large flocks, that will eventually get affected by the chemtrails and most likely die because of them. If it's not the bird flu that gets them, it's going to be the chemtrails that gets them in the end. Birds that stick around all year and don't migrate won't be affected so severely by chemtrails, just partially, because it's in the air, just like humans get affected partially because it's in the air. So as a chemtrail is released from a plane and starts to descend upon a flock of birds migrating, oxygen literally gets dissolved out of the sky through a chemical interaction of highly toxic chemicals intermingling with oxygen itself, a chemical combustion, where the oxygen gets vaporized instantly. Now, as birds either fly into this chemtrail or a chemtrail descends upon a flock of birds flying, and the birds begin to inhale that chemtrail, and those chemtrails, those toxins, enter the lungs of the bird. Any oxygen within the bird's lungs gets vaporized immediately. The same chemical interaction occurs. This then leads to the bloodstream. As the toxins enter the bloodstream through the bird's lungs, it begins to vaporize all oxygen that's in the bloodstream itself and organs of the bird. Oxygen gets sucked right out of the bird. And this is why not just 3 birds out of 50 birds die, or 100 birds out of 5,000 birds die. Instead, all 5,000 birds die, or even 50,000 birds in a massive flock die all at once. This is the sinister assault on birds that occurs. Now, if there are birds on the edge of the flock that are on the edge of the trail, or birds that are on the edge of the trail, the far edge, or the trail as it's descending upon the flock is missing, hitting some of the birds, and they only get partially sickened, they may go down as well, land on the ground, flap around before they die, versus all the other birds landing on the ground already dead. They died up in the sky. Now, birds flapping around on the ground, sickened by the chemtrails, die with a delayed effect. They can't survive it, even if they were given help. The reason why is because the poison is still in their system and dissolving the oxygen, taking it out of their organs and out of their blood. They're just having a slower death from having less of the poison. But still, in the end, they die from it. Now, birds are profound spiritual creatures, so it's not a surprise that the chemtrail programs and the geoengineering programs are killing the birds at the pace that they're doing so. The hierarchy, or the shadow government, and others that are responsible for the chemtrail programs and for the classified geoengineering programs bask in the practice of killing such profound spiritual creatures like birds, which now takes us to a different topic, but yet it's a topic that's related. How did the birds get here? Not all birds were naturally created here on this planet, planet Earth. Many birds were brought here from afar, from distant planets, by extraterrestrials. So man on this planet that are using these chemtrails and destroying these birds are in violation of extraterrestrial laws that brought the birds here to begin with, which is another reason that over time Aliens, extraterrestrials, will not put up with the chemtrails and the geoengineering trails. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can go to medicalmedium.com for more free information and find me on Telegram where I leave exclusive messages. You can also find me on Rumble, YouTube, check me out on IG, sign up to my newsletter, and check out the Medical Medium book series. The book Cleanse to Heal, the Brain Saver books, Medical Medium New Edition, Liver Rescue. Those are just some of the incredible books that have saved so many lives around the world with advanced medical information that nobody knew. Answers to chronic illness that opens the door to finally healing. And if you're someone who's interested in powerful, life-changing spiritual information, check out Medical Medium Angels, Demons, and Spiritual Tools, which you can find on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. Always remember, have compassion for yourself. You're a good person. Your body loves you unconditionally. And always remember, you can heal. Many blessings, and God bless you. Flight 666, this is the base. Do you read me? Over. This is Flight 666 to the base. What can I do for you? Over. Flight 666, there's reports you haven't released any chemicals today. Over. This is Flight 666 to the base. The day's still early. I still have 1 more hour to go, sir. Over. Flight 666, this is the base. Give us a report. Give us the reason. Is there a malfunction? Why haven't you released the chemicals? Over. This is Flight 666 to the base, sir. Well, quite frankly, it's migration, sir. Lots of birds flying. Just waiting for an opportunity to release the chemicals, sir. No harm done. Over. Flight 666, this is the base. Release the chemicals. Open up injectors. Over. Sir, this is Flight 666. Can't quite read you. Breaking up, sir. Breaking up. Transmission not coherent. Over. Flight 666, this is the base. Stop fooling around. Release the chemicals. This is going to be a strike on your record. Over. This is Flight 666 to the base. May I ask a question, sir? Do you like birds, sir? You see, at home, we have some bird feeders up. And we watch the birds every day through the kitchen window, sir. And right now, I'm kind of giving the birds a little chance. Just to get out of my way, sir. Nothing more than that. Over. Flight 666, this is the base. It would be in your best interest if you release all chemicals now. There's more problems that come along with defying orders. Beyond insubordination. Flight 666, open up all injectors now. This is Flight 666 to the base. Opening up all injectors. Turning all switches on. Releasing full 50,000 gallons of content as we speak, sir. Over. Very good, Flight 666. This is Flight 666. Roger that, base. Over.
Original published medical medium information gets stolen and poached by podcast doctors, social media doctors, influencers, and medical clinics. Medical medium information has never yet been proven wrong by medical science and research. Instead, the opposite, only proven right and then taken from medical medium published material and used in the conventional and alternative health communities. Medical medium information continually sets the stage for medical science to understand chronic illness better. If you choose to share or use the original, unique content from the Medical Medium podcast, books, or Medical Medium social media, please cite where this information comes from, so others who see and learn of this information have a chance to know where it all originates, to give them an opportunity to heal, so they don't end up losing years of their life searching for answers like so many have before them. The Medical Medium information here on this podcast doesn't come from broken science, interest groups, medical funding with strings attached, botched research, lobbyists, internal kickbacks, persuaded belief systems, private panels of influencers, health field payoffs, trendy traps, or gathered bits and pieces of gimmicky confusion. Because chronic illness is exploding like never before in our modern day history, it takes a greater force than us down here. It takes a helping hand from above. Medical medium information has street cred. It's an organic movement of countless people around the world healing. More healing stories of real people not being paid to tell their life-changing experiences of rising out of the ashes of sickness and entering into the light of full recovery, getting their lives back and finally healing when nothing else in the world of health could move the needle and get them better. The information on this podcast is not man-made. It comes from above, from a higher source. Whatever you believe in, whether God, the universe, the light, or the creator, or if you believe in nothing at all, that we're just floating through space together on this rock, know that the information you hear on this podcast is separate from all the other noise out there. It comes from a different place, a pure, untampered with, advanced, clean, uncorrupted, original, primary source, a higher source, spirit of compassion.